So if you're watching this video, you've heard about AI agents. You've heard how they can boost your efficiency, how you need them in your business, or you need to start building them and selling them to other businesses, but you're probably not sure what exactly they are and how they work. This is going to be as short of an explanation as possible, literally just the basics, nothing more, nothing less, as far as what it takes to actually understand agents enough to get started implementing them. So the video is going to be broken up into two parts. There's going to be universal concepts that apply to every single agent from Claude Code all the way to Hermes agent. And then we're going to break down the actual differences in the agents and how they're set up and their different components. Everything that I'm about to go over is going to be in a free school community, which will be linked in the description. This is brought to you by integralagents.io. We build agentic frameworks for businesses to improve efficiency and profitability. If you're interested in figuring out what AI agents could do for your particular business, book a free AI audit. That will also be in the description. So, in order to really use AI agents effectively, you need to understand their basic architecture. Like, what are the basic components? What are the basic building blocks that make up AI agents? And after you understand this, it's pretty simple, no matter which one you choose to pick, to understand like what you need to give it in order to get the best output out of it. So the most important thing to understand is that AI agents are loops. So they take in context, they make decisions, they take action, then they observe the results of that action and they decide if they need to think about more decisions to make in order to better fulfill whichever context they were given, whichever instructions they were given. So it's really like a loop. That's why they call it the agentic loop. Now, when it comes to accomplishing this loop, there are some basic components that apply to basically any or to every AI agent, regardless of the framework. So the first and the most important thing is the model. This is the intelligence. This is what makes the decision. This is what runs the show. So what you do need to understand is that a model by itself is very powerful, but all a model is basically it's a set of equations that takes in text and then it produces the best text in order to satisfy the text that was entered into it. Now, it has the entire internet that goes into these calculations in order to best predict this text, but the entire internet isn't your specific scenario. It isn't your specific business, which is why there is a source.md file and there's other stuff like memory, which we'll discuss later. But when it comes to the source.md file, this is basically the blueprint. This is a basic summary on the purpose that your AI agent has, like what it's supposed to be doing. What is its context? Like if it's a sales development representative, what's the company it's working for? What does it typically do? What style does it take when it's outreaching to prospects? This is in your source.md file. And across the different AI agentic frameworks, this source.md file will be named different things, but it basically does the same thing all the time. It just gives your model context. Your model by itself is just like a brain with a bunch of general knowledge but nothing specific. And that's what your source.md file gives it. Next, we have skills. So your skills are like a recipe or a standard operating procedure. It's just a set of steps to get a desired outcome. So if your agent is supposed to be a customer service agent, your skill will have steps on how to analyze questions, basically how to respond to questions, where to pull the knowledge from, what tone of writing to use in the response, whether to keep things short or to be more verbose, be more talkative. Your skill will basically have all the instructions on how an AI agent should accomplish any task, and you can set them up for whichever task you want them to use. You can also set up skills to manage these next components, which we're going to talk about, which is tools and connectors. So Your tools and connectors are basically what allows your agent to be different from just a regular chatbot. It's what separates Codex from just ChatGPT. Your Codex has tools where it can write files, it can read files, it can run commands, it can search the web, it can make HTTP requests. It basically has hands. It can interact with the internet the same way anybody with a computer could. And this is the real power with AI agents. Now, your basic tools are basically reading files, writing files, running commands. Connectors are basically like specialized tools. So think about like specific SaaS applications. So think about like using Slack or using Google Drive, uploading files, reading files, editing files, deleting files from Google Drive specifically will require a Google Drive connector. Like if you want to send messages on Slack, you need a Slack connector. So connectors basically, they're like tools, but they're for specific SaaS applications or specific APIs that you want your agent to have access to. Next, we have subagents. Subagents sound very complicated, like this idea of you having a single agent and that agent has 10 subagents, which each have 10 subagents. But in reality, it's not really that complicated. A subagent is like a fresh session. So every time you load up your agent, it's basically a blank LLM, and then you give it your source MD file, which gives it the context. You might load in some memory, which gives it more context, and now it can actually use its tools to accomplish objectives. So a subagent is basically like you loading a fresh LLM, giving it a specific task, and then just letting it run loose in its own environment where it has its own memory and its own context. And it works independently of the main agent. So it's just running by itself. It can communicate with the main agent. It can return and report to the main agent, but it's basically like its own agent is running in its own session, and it's just isolated. So that's what a subagent is. Depending on which framework you're using, there's a limit to how many subagents it can spawn, but basically all of the agentic frameworks can spawn a good amount of subagents, like more than you would ever really need at one time. Next, we have hooks. So hooks are basically like triggers that cause specific actions to take place. So you might have a specific skill, a specific set of steps, but a hook is basically what will trigger your agent to run these specific set of steps. So hooks will basically, they allow you to do things like, okay, an email comes in, respond to it using this set of steps. That's what you use hooks for. Next, we have memory. So memory, very important. It basically, your agent is going to store what it's doing, what you're telling it, problems that it's running into. It's going to store these in MD files, and it's basically it's going to inject some of this context when it starts. So along with the source MD file, it'll also get some memory context, but it also has the ability to search memory. So if you say, hey, remember this thing that I told you a week ago, it can search its memory files from a week ago and pull that thing that you told it and use it however it's supposed to use it. So memory is very important, big part of what makes agents, and not just regular chatbots. And then packaging, basically your plugins, your marketplaces, just bundling everything together into whichever framework you're using. So if you understand these basic components, this basically applies to every AI agent. So if you understand what the model is, how it's basically the brain of your agent, you understand the source MD file is basically giving your model the context that it needs to work and be your agent, do what exactly you need it to do for your specific business, your skills, their standard operating procedures, their recipes. It's basically steps that are repeated over and over to get a consistent result. Your tools basically allow your agent to interact with the internet and accomplish anything that you could accomplish on a computer. Connectors, extensions of tools for specific SaaS applications, whether that be GitHub, whether that be Slack, Notion, 11 Labs, whatever you can think of. Subagents, these are like isolated sessions. They They're basically giving a model a fresh prompt, some fresh context, and letting it work by itself, um, simultaneously at the same time as your main agent, and then it can return whatever it does and whatever it finds out or accomplishes to your main agent. You have your hooks. These are triggers that basically they're triggers that cause your agent to behave a certain way or to execute a certain action. You have your memory, pretty self-explanatory, and then you have your packaging and plugins, putting everything together. So if you understand these universal elements, you understand AI agents, and no matter which framework you choose to use, you'll be able to get efficient results. So these universal properties are kind of what we just went through. The basically the reason act agentic loop, tool layers, isolated subagents, persistent memory, etc. Now, when it comes to the specific frameworks, I'm going to give you a brief overview over the 5 most relevant agentic frameworks out right now at the time of this video. Things will change. If you want to stay updated, make sure you're in the School community. But when it comes to Claude Code, basically the source MD file that they use is a claude.md. They basically organize Claude folders. Your Claude agent will have a .claude folder, and this .claude folder will have different different subfolders with rules. It might have skills, might have other things that you need, and that's basically the way Claude kind of runs the system. For Codex, which is OpenAI's agentic framework, they have agents.md file, which is the source MD file that kind of loads the context and the blueprint for what the agent does. They have a config.toml file, which handles some of the other settings, as opposed to like just having a subfolder directory the way Claude Code does. Google Anti-Gravity. This is Google's agentic platform. They have a folder set up pretty similar to Claude, whereas though they have a skills subfolder, they have a workflows subfolder, they have an agent subfolder where you can create different skills, different sub-agents, different workflows that you want your agent to have. For Hermes agent, it's a little bit different than like Codex or Claude Code or Anti-Gravity. They have what they call a soul.md file. So your Hermes agent is kind of like your personal assistant. So your soul.md file is kind of like giving it a personality, like how agreeable is it? How does it deal with uncertainty, or basically just what's its voice, what's its style. It also has memory.md files and user.md files. This is the important part when it comes to injecting the context that allows it to run, that allows it to save information and basically get better the more that it's run. OpenClaw has a very similar framework to Hermes. They have an agents.md file. They have an identity.md file. These files, well, the identity.md file and the soul.md file kind of give it its personality. Your agents.md file is kind of like the standard blueprint for like what its purpose is and how it should operate. Basically, all of these different frameworks, they all have a variety of different tools. Any software with the API, all 5 of these different options can basically access it and get things done and use tools in order to accomplish whichever purposes you're trying to accomplish. But that's a basic overview. Right here, we have a side-by-side comparison of like the different components for each of these agents. Once again, if you want this file, it will be in the free school community. If you want to see like how to actually build out Hermes agent flows and OpenClaw flows in particular, that's going to be in the paid community. You can also learn how to deploy these agents on the 24/7 server for free. If you're interested in having somebody build out an agent or multiple agents specifically for your business to handle specific use cases that you want, make sure to book a free AI audit. That will be in the description.